in here with my campaign guide for Tretch Craventail, the most worthless legendary lord in the entirety of Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. He is one of the worst legendary lords in the game, alongside people like Kugath and Kairos to play. He usually loses his campaign to the other factions around him, all of which despise him one way or another. The Chaos Dwarves, for instance, have a minus 60 aversion against you as the Skaven. Actually, it's quite a bit more than that. These guys over here that hate you, other factions hate you as well. For pretty clear and obvious reasons, I'll be honest with you about that. Now, Clan Rictus is all about starting wars with factions and keeping those wars going. What do I mean by keeping those wars going? So, well, for instance, over here, let's say if I'm foolish enough to declare war, or let's say I join this war against the Dripping Fangs over here with the Chaos Dwarves, then I gain this benefit. It lasts 3 turns. But if I then also declare war on the Darkland Orcs, just an example, it goes to 6. So this benefit is pretty much always going to be on if you're playing a campaign on a high difficulty. So you get a good amount of ambush success chance, Vanguard deployment for all armies, battle reinforcement time, and army ability number of uses +1 for menace below. Now, on top of this, you also have a bunch of benefits in Tretch's army. He gets Devastating Flanker for all the units in his army, melee attack during ambushes, and melee attack after retreating from a battle, which you should never do. Then his special skill line gives him Tretch's Raider, which gives him 10 extra charge bonus for Storm Vermin, and also the ability that gives them, within 35 meters, base weapon damage, armor piercing, and melee attack. He's basically really focused on the melee units of the Skaven, the melee infantry units, so Clan Rats and Storm Vermin. The problem is both Clan Rats and Storm Vermin are not really good units to use in a campaign. There are some really good melee units for the Skaven, but they're found in the monster roster. So if you're thinking about Rat Ogres or Brood Horrors or Mutant Rat Ogres, not necessarily Hellpit Abominations, but those are the good melee infantry units. Instead, if you're playing Skaven, what you want to get in a lot of campaigns early on is the Hidden Lair and then the Assassin's Hideout, so Gutter Runners and Night Runners. The reason is those units are pretty decent in a fight in melee, but they'll also do quite a lot of range damage because they are skirmisher infantry units. So consider Oxyatel's army. That's what all Skaven want to go for if you're playing them, because these units are going to be pretty durable. They're going to be pretty fast if their leadership is broken, and they all get Vanguard deployment. So the Vanguard deployment benefit you're getting is not necessarily so useful. You can certainly benefit from a lot of menaces from below. Now, with that in mind, you also start with an Assassin, a Doom Wheel, 4 Skaven Slaves. You're going to get rid of these pretty quickly, Death Runners, and 2 Storm Vermin. What do you want to do in this campaign? Well, here's what I figured out. Now, this is on Legendary. Legendary very hard. So you go over here, you auto-resolve this battle, and I would recommend going for money. Food would be nice, undeniably so, but money is what you should go for. You can also get the right. The right you should go for is the Dominating Scheme. You can benefit from the Scheme of Doom, sure, the Pestilence Scheme as well, but really what you're going to want early on is the Dominating Scheme. And with the Pestilence Scheme, don't make the mistake I've done with Tretch's campaign, in that don't use it on a province right next to you, because you're gonna live to regret it. Now over here it is a bit weird because I actually ended up taking a bit more damage than I assumed. Like I just literally did this campaign and I just auto-resolved that first battle Legendary very hard. I guess there's a randomness factor. But you want to take over this settlement and not lose as many units as I did there. And what you want to do here is 2 things. You want to get the tier 2 settlement. You also want to get this to tier 2. You want to get the Hidden Lair. You shouldn't recruit units, and get the growth as well from Commandment, for all that. And not lose this many units, by the way, from your first battle. Should just be pointed out. I've been able to auto-resolve those battles, but crucially, you want to get this to tier 2 so you can get the Hidden Lair. This will allow you to have 2 assassins, and with the clan barracks, you'll have 2 chieftains. Once you get these 2 structures, you shouldn't recruit any units. It's fine if you lose the Skaven slaves in your initial army, but what you want to do, take this, take Mount Silver Spear, then go to Skarsnik over here, and get the non-aggression pact and declare war on his factions. You don't want to declare war on any other factions necessarily, or you could declare war on Drazhoath, but either way, Mount Silver Spear, Crookback Mountain, Mount Greyhag, recruit units as you're going, so but only once the hidden lair is built. You might have to fight a manual battle here on Mount Greyhag. Now, once you're done with that, go to these guys. Don't declare war on them. Go to them and first ask them for money for you to declare war on Drazhoath. Your main early game challenge is going to be Drazhoath Ashen. You can defeat his army in a one-on-one confrontation. He's going to have Fireglaves, he's going to have Cast Dwarf Warriors, but most of his army is actually going to be made up of Laborers. Your Night Runners will tear them to shreds. The problem with dealing with Drazhoath is that he gets this army ability, and he has 2 uses for this army ability, and it does a lot of damage. Playing against Drazhoath is like playing against Ichthoclaw if Ichthoclaw basically had an infinite number of nukes in battles. Basically, every time you fight a battle against Drazhoath and it's a manual battle, you are going to have to deal with this ability. And you can avoid it, but obviously there's a lot of other things that you're dealing with in a battle. Night Runners with slings do require a good amount of micromanagement. My advice would be to try and keep your Storm Vermin and Death Runners alive. Just keep them hidden. Your heroes, generally he won't use the ability on your heroes or lords because I don't think it would do a lot of damage to them. But rather it's going to use it on a clump of units. So maybe just clump up a bunch of units and pay attention if you're clumping up some units. Maybe clump up some units deliberately and pay attention to them so that when he is using the Dreadquake Mortar, you know what's coming. You want to defeat Drazhoath. There's various reasons for it. One of the big reasons is the Black Fortress is a major caravan route. So if you can't take it, then you can just get a bunch of caravans to raid and get a huge amount of money, which you will need. Once you've dealt with that, you have a couple of choices in your campaign. One of the things I would strongly recommend to do is you want to build a full stack under Tretch of Night Runners, and you then will move, like once you've taken Mount Greyhag, you move over here, you set an ambush stance. By the time you've done that, Drazhoath should have taken the Darkhold. He's going to move north to intercept you. Maybe you ambush him, maybe you don't. I failed to ambush him in my campaign that I did. But either way, you can defeat that army in battle. Even if you're running around like a hellish chicken, letting your Night Runners with slings, you should always get more Night Runners with slings than regular Night Runners, just because they have more ammunition, they'll do more damage. Just run around, kill his Laborers. Use Menace Below on his Fireglaves, on his Blunderbusses. If you start getting shot constantly by Fireglaves and Blunderbusses, you're going to lose a lot of troops, because they do a lot of damage. Dealing with gunpowder units of the Cast Dwarves, it's a bit tricky, because obviously they need to get in range, they need to have good line of sight, but if you ignore them, they're going to tear you to shreds. That's how they're designed. But defeat Drazhoath's main army, your main army. Once you're moving out of this province, though, recruit a second army on Mount Greyhag under a Master Assassin. The reason you want to do under a Master Assassin is for this reason. The Master Assassin gets this particular skill. So all those Night Runners and Gutter Runners are going to get a significant missile strength benefit under Master Assassin. You don't need to recruit just Master Assassins as lords, but the first lord you should recruit is a Master Assassin. Either way, take Darkhold, take the Sentinels, or take Darkhold, Black Fortress Sentinels. Depend on where you want to go. Like, once you have taken the Darkhold, you can move your army into a point where you can attack either the Sentinels or the Black Fortress. I personally took the Sentinels first, and then left the Black Fortress for last. Cast Dwarves will recruit in a similar way to Skaven do, in the sense that anyone who's played against Skaven or Greenskins or Vampire Counts will know that they recruit a lot of armies very, very quickly. That's what the Cast Dwarves do. They're not affected by supply lines. Laborers are cheap. They're very cheap, especially for an AI which gets a bunch of economic benefits and upkeep benefits. So they'll maintain. Don't be surprised if Drazhoath throws 3 full stacks against you if you let him. Now, once Drazhoath is defeated, you have the following choices. You can go and Pug Barter, take it, and sell it to Gorst, who is likely going to take the scrap towers by this point. Now, Gorst doesn't particularly like you, but he also doesn't particularly hate you. So you can make an alliance with him. And that whether or not you should depends on who's winning over here. It can be a situation where Greasus wins. It can be a situation where Gorse just wipes him out. Depending on what difficulty you're playing on, how things have shaped up. Pay attention to what's going on. And the way you figure out who's winning is once you get vision on a faction, right? You can tell by this bar and their strength rank how their strength is. If you see Gorse's strength dropping, then it means he's lost the fight. He might recuperate, but Greasus is going to have an advantage. Now, it's very difficult for Gorse to be completely wiped out by another faction. It isn't so difficult for Greasus to be wiped out. In fact, Greasus can be wiped out fairly easily. And then there's the major issue of Grimgor. But Grimgor is not your biggest concern. In fact, he's probably one of your last concerns in your campaign. You kind of have some cooperation going with him. Though, bear in mind, the Greenskins aren't your biggest friends, but they're also not your biggest enemy. You're actually one of the few, if only, faction in this entire area that can avoid a war with Grimgor. If you can ally Grimgor, that is an amazing situation. Because while the Greenskins generally make poor military allies, because they're very aggressive and start a bunch of wars that you may not want, you're a Skaven and everyone hates you. So because everyone hates you, you don't really care because you're going to end up in a lot of wars anyway. This meter is going to be pretty bloody ridiculous. Like, it's already turn 1, it's 12 turns for a surprise attack. Don't be surprised if you end up with like 30, 40, 60 turns. Like, your entire campaign is going to be played with this. I think I figured out what Tretch Craventail's benefit is. It's like he's not benefiting Storm Vermin, he's benefiting ambushers and Vanguard deployment. It's a bit insane. Now, to be honest, the Vanguard deployment is not so significant because you're going to get Vanguard deployment on a lot of units anyway. Sure, it's nice to get your artillery closer to the front line, but there's also downsides. You don't necessarily want to use Vanguard deployment all the time. But once you deal with Drazhoath, yeah, you can go take Pickbar to Gorst, or ignore everything that's going here and take out Imrik and then march north. The reason you're going to want to march north is Skarsang has this tendency right now in the current patch, at least on Legendary Very Hard, where he's going to march his army through your territory and take Caracate Peaks. Don't ask me how the fuck Skarsnik with a full stack manages to take Caracate Peaks. He did it. He might fail, he might flop and die, but the problem with that is he's going to die. He's going to lose the territory here anyway. And the issue with that is Forgrim is going to come down from the mountains and Mount Silver Spear is right next to him. So you might want to deal with Imrik very quickly, ignore Pigbarter, or if you have to deal with Ogres, deal with Imrik first, then deal with Ogres, or deal with Imrik first and then decide what you're going to do, because the Ogres won't necessarily hate you. They don't particularly like Drazhoath or Imrik, so you wiping them out, you might get good relations with them. You shouldn't ally them, but Gorst also likes these Ogres over here, the Thunderguts. And you're not going to benefit from taking Pigbarter for yourself. I mean, there's some trade resources, but you're going to benefit a lot more from taking Imrik's territory, actually. At any rate, take out Imrik, decide what you're going to do with these fellows, or take out the Scalded Delta and then deal with Imrik and then move north. Bear in mind, the more time you spend south, the more issues you're going to get in the north. You could also decide to ignore Imrik, though do so at your peril, because ignoring Imrik can bite you in the ass pretty damn hard. If you allow Imrik to get strong and get on that dragon, he's going to be he's going to require a monumental effort to defeat. But once you've dealt with Imrik, head north, where you might have these cast dwarves over here in the Tower of Gorgoth coming for you. I made the foolish mistake of going to the Silver Pinnacle and asking them for money and then declaring for a declaration of war on Azak. Don't do that, because Azak might just come for you. Might decide, okay, I'm not at war with Drykel. I mean, not declare war on Drykel. I'm just going to march all my armies through the Darklands just to hit Tretch. That has happened in my campaign. It was fun experience, I gotta say. I've been doing some tests with Tretch. So suffice to say, ending up in a war with Azak is not a fun idea when your armies are down in the south. But also, if your armies are down in the south, then the Tower of Gorgoth might just say, it's free real estate, let's go get them. And they will. They can do so. Now, I would probably spend food on getting the Black Fortress to tier 3. The reason I would do so is because you want the Warp Reactor building chain. That will boost your income, the Arcane Generator, starting with that. Same with the Fortress of Vorak, spend the food there. You'll actually get quite a bit of food. Just spend it wisely on these kind of things. Like, only upgrade provincial capitals that are worth it. There's And you do get the Tower of the Bloody Tooth over here, though it is pretty damn expensive to actually pick up. But if you have the money for it, it can be really damn useful to pick that one up. Bear that in mind. And then you can march north, or you can let everyone run and burn your territory to the ground over here in the north. I would recommend against that, obviously. Queek is going to win over here in the south. And if you take out Imrik, he's going to dominate the south. Now, the problem is you can have good relations with Skarsnik and you can have good relations with Queek, but I don't think you can have good relations with both of them. That's a bit of a problem. It might work out, but it might also end up in a situation where they end up at war with one another and you have to choose. I'd probably choose Queek in that situation. Skarsnik is just as pathetic as you are. Like, Tretch is the most pathetic Skaven Legendary Lord. Skarsnik is the most pathetic Greenskin Legendary Lord. Some people are like, Skarsnik is great. No, he never was. Either way, deal with the situation in South. Establish good relations with Quake. If you have to take Karak or some territory in Karak to secure a military alliance, do so. But I wouldn't be concerned about Karak or Cazador, because Warzag and Queek are going to wipe him out pretty quickly. Cazador will generally take Black Crag and wipe out Clan Vermin or put them on the back hold. But your concerns are to the north. You have Forgrim over here. You might want to deal with him. You've got Azag. You've got Grimgor. You've got Astrogoth as well. If you decide to move against Forgrim, bear in mind it's going to be a pretty brutal fight unless you get Plague Claw Catapults. A particular build order I go for is I try and get Night Runners pretty quickly. I try and get Chieftains pretty quickly, 2 and 2 with Assassins and Chieftains. And then I try and get Engineers, 1 Engineer. And there's also right over here the Scheme of Doom. This is supposed to put a Skaven lab in another city. It doesn't work in Darklands for whatever reason, or rather it doesn't work in Kasdorf settlements, because I wanted to put one in Zarnagrund itself, and it didn't work. It did, however, work when I tested it further if I put one under Karak Flux. The reason you want to use the Scheme of Doom is because that lab gives you 1 Warlock Engineer capacity itself, and otherwise increasing Warlock Engineer capacity requires a tier 5 settlement. But don't do it in the Darklands. I'm not sure if it's a Kasdorf settlement thing or if it's the Darklands remake that's affecting that. But right now, if you're putting a Warlock Engineer lab, it's not going to show up. The building won't be constructed. The Undercity will be constructed, but not the lab. But yeah, just deal with Forgrim or try and ignore the situation and see who ends up coming on top. You don't necessarily want to face the full might of Forgrim in your campaign, especially not when you've got other problems to potentially deal with, like Greece over here to the east, or potentially ending up in a war with Grimgor. Now, there are things you can certainly abuse in this campaign, right? There's Clan Carrion here. You can declare war on them and take their settlement. Or rather, just sack it. But bear in mind, the Skaven, you're not going to be able to take it at tier 4. You're going to have to spend the food. But wiping out this army, just winning this battle, will give you a ton of money in this particular situation. Keep that in mind. Because while you can't take over the settlement, you can, however, gain a lot of money. Same with Zarnagrund itself. Sacking it will be significant in your campaign if you can do so. And obviously, you can do so by cheesing it with like a stealth unit. You have that ability with any stealth unit, with any hidden unit in your campaign. But it is kind of a straightforward campaign path, like take out the greenskins, then take out Drazhoath, then deal with Imrik or Pigbarter or both in whatever order you want, and go back north, stabilize the situation over here. Maybe help Skarsnik to push back Forgrim and let Skarsnik handle the rest, or to keep him back. Because Forgrim will lose if you help Skarsnik out. And maybe Skarsnik can handle that situation and secure your western flank. Bear in mind the situation that might happen with Skarsnik. And bear in mind that Ungrim might come down from the north as well. On top of that, there's not much else really to say. It's just really a brutal early game, and then after that, once you've established, if you've secured some flanks, like you can secure your eastern flank with Gorse, you can secure your western flank with Queek and Skarsnik. Once you've done that, you can expand further north and take some of these elements. There's a particularly great landmark over here in Zarnarun. The castors will hate you for it, but screw them. Doesn't matter. And yeah, deal with Astrogoth. Maybe take some of this territory for yourself and give it to Grimgor, or maybe help out Gorst to deal with Greasus. And once Greasus is dead, see who wins between Gorst and Grimgor. That would actually be an interesting question to ask, because I haven't played a campaign so long that, or a campaign where Grimgor could just fight the full might of Gorst. Most of the time what happens is Gorst gets put on the back foot because of Kugaf to the south, or things like that, or because he spends too much time dealing with Greasus, and then Grimgor just slams into him full force. But it would be pretty interesting to see who would win that particular fight, I would say. And you can watch it as a spectator as Tretch Craventail. Tretch himself, yeah, not really that great. He only has one quest item, and it's not even a good quest item, to be honest. The money you get from the quest battle is worth it, but the quest battle is a bit more difficult than one might assume. Anyway, that's all there is to say. Costin signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.